Hello. With me today, we have the wonderful Jenny Kane, author of romantic comedies. I'm going to get straight to the question. Jenny, which genre do you write in and how do you define that genre?
Oh, see, this is a very difficult question because I do a lot. As Jenny Kane, which is like one of my three me's, as it were. I think I write romantic comedies. My publishers tell me I write romances. And we walk the riddle line and call it contemporary women's fiction. And basically, they're like a mishmash of the same thing. I tend to call it rom-com because life is hilarious and stupid and ridiculous. And I think if we can embrace that, then, you know, it's easier to handle and it's far more fun. And I try to make my characters real and fun and funny without sort of like making it an out, you know, laugh a minute. It's just real life, and real life is funny. And although I do have romantic strands in my stories, I'm not setting out to write a romance. There's a romance in it because romance is in life, you know, and people are like that. But I define it by audience, really.
So by audience, is that why it becomes women's fiction? Because
largely, although I've got to say, I have a lot of chaps seem to read my books if the reviews are anything to go by. But you do have to be sensible when you are writing to make money. You do have to think carefully who your audience actually is, you know, your target demographic. And in this case, it's going to be largely female. Although, you know, I've got to say, I tend to relax a little bit when I'm writing. I just write for what I like, and more than anything. But when it comes down to defining the genre, if I was writing cozy crime, I would be thinking of a mixed market in the age group of 40 to 65. I know this is horribly generalized, but this is it. For romance, I'm thinking women 25 to 90. When I'm writing medieval crime, which I do as Jennifer Ash, I'm thinking of a broader age range, you know, male and female audience. It's unbelievably hard to define genre because it means different things to different people.
It absolutely is, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
You know, my PhD was about the relationship between plot and genre. And the whole idea was, spend 4 or 5 years trying to work out what genre it is and then sort of like fudge it in the document that I eventually submitted.
Well, see, the answer is that there isn't an answer. Yeah. And it's like science, isn't it? Whenever you do a scientific experiment, 9 times out of 10, the result will be negative, and all you've done is ruled something out. So it's progressive, but there's often no answer. I mean, and what genre means to me isn't going to mean the same to you.
One of the things that I'd learned was that apparently the Alexandrian Library had got one genre of books that were called books that were found on ships, which, yeah, now if Waterstones still had that as a category that you could walk into, yeah.
Well, I mean, and you only have to look at Amazon, don't you? How they break down their charts. Yeah. You'll see lots and lots of people with bestseller flags, and that's lovely. And I mean, I've made the most of it myself. But some of the charts are so obscure and tiny, it's quite hard not to have a bestseller sticker. I have been in the top 10, and this is not a lie, of children's picture books with cows in for years. I suspect there are only maybe 12, 15 books in the whole chart, but it's a real chart.
Wow.
Go figure. So, you know.
Yeah. That.
Sorry.
I'm just thinking of who goes in thinking, I've got to get a picture book with cows in it for this particular child. And,
well, yeah. It's funny because I think a lot of that actually, again, if you think about it, comes down to geographical location. I live in Devon, I have a large farming community. And I wrote this book because I was talking at a school, a private school in Exeter. Because it was private school, kids came in from all over. And there was this little lad who'd never seen.
Oh, fiddlesticks, you froze for a second there.
I think you might have frozen, Ash. There you go.
One of us did. A little lad came in. Were you saying he'd never seen a cow? He'd
never seen a cow. And then we had this discussion further, and I found that some of the kids didn't know what a flat was. The book is called There's a Cow in the Flat. and it was very interesting. I wasn't living down here at the time. I was living up in Scotland actually. This is just one of my writerly travels, and it got me thinking that perhaps part of our job as writers is to educate a little bit in a fun way. Yeah. And so I wrote this book, There's a Cow in the Flat. So I think people do look for specific animals to help teach their children things. I hope.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds as though I'm going on a scatological thing. I'm not doing it deliberately to be offensive, but part of my search history on Amazon had just shown me a book about a romance between somebody and their poo, and then it's brought up a children's book about the perfect poo.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking inside the perfect poo this morning, and the rhymes in it are actually a lot of fun. And yeah, again, it's a good educational lesson about not pushing children too hard. And which I do think there's a wonderful, incredibly subversive. But yeah, what's your writing schedule?
Oh, it's insane, honey. That would be the quick answer. Okay, so I'm a really tough boss. I would hate to work for me. So I am at my desk at 7:30 in the morning, and for that first hour I will deal with any emails that have come in overnight, of which there are generally quite a few, and social media, getting any blogs out that people have wanted to set up on my post, etc., etc. It's unusual that I'm not then writing by 8:15, and I write the latest novel that I'm on through till about 11:30, generally speaking. After that, my creativity isn't quite as good. The brain isn't as functioning as it used to be. So I keep going if there are ideas, keep going, I'm in the flow. Otherwise, that's when I take a quick walk. And then after that, I deal with student work because, like yourself, I teach creative writing. I mentor several students. I've got a lot of novelists on my books at the moment that I'm going through. So I work for them till about 3, and then I go back to my own stuff and I start going through my edits and I write up my chapter by chapter plan, which I would encourage anybody who is writing a novel to do. And this isn't planning out each chapter in advance. This is writing a small précis of the chapter you've written that day or the day before in a book, so that when you've finished your novel and you have to write the dreaded synopsis, you've already got a potted version of your novel right there in a notebook. And not only does it help with the synopsis and write a blurb, when you've finished your draft, you can read your chapter plan and the plot holes leap out at you because it's all there, and you can see where there's action you've missed, if there's something that you need to expand, if there's a character that you think, this character's really active in chapters 1 and 3, but I haven't written this name for ages. This guy's got to go, chop, So that's my last writery thing that I do every day.
That's a genius idea. I'd never even come across that. That as a retrospective way of studying what you've already written is, as you say, incredibly useful for the synopsis. When you're sitting down between 8:15 and 11:30 and writing original material, have you got any sort of structure that you're working from, or is this just all straight from the head?
Right. Okay. So in the old days when life was free, I would just splurge it on the page. Back in the days, I used to write as KJB, I used to do erotica, and I didn't have contracts as such. I would write what I wanted, and then hopefully somebody would buy it. Now, as Jenny, I have a publishing contract, so time is very tight. So I have to be quite strict with myself. So I make myself write a whole chapter, plus a little bit more, because blank pages frighten me. So I'll finish a chapter, and then I'll write, say, 500 words of tomorrow's chapter. Also, I have, because publishers like to know what your book's going to be about before you've written it, I have, say, a 15-page sort of plot. I don't stick to it rigidly because the characters do their own thing, don't they? Yes. But I have that as like a skeleton, if you like, and I refer to that all day. So it's relaxed but strict, if that makes any sense.
Perfect sense. Yeah. So that does lead me nicely into what's most important for you. Is it plot or character?
Oh, both. You can't separate them, honey. That would be an absolute disaster. You can't. Plot, character, and location intertwined. You can't set. And as soon as you start trying to analyze them separately, or for me anyway, and as you know, there isn't a right way, but for me, they are all intertwined, because emotion is a very strong part of how I write my stories, because they're all coming from the place of the main character or characters, whether it's the erotica, the historical crime, or the rom-coms. I suppose I'm character-led, but I'm only character-led so the plot works, because everything is spun around how people react, cause and effect.
Yes.
So there is no plot without the characters, but if I haven't got my characters, my plot's screwed. And all of it is encompassed by the location, because people react to location in an emotional way. You can't see or experience anywhere without a preconception of that place or a memory of that place if you've been there before. So all of those three things are equally important to me, and they're all there in my head all the time. So I personally cannot separate them. So I'm sorry if that's not a definitive or helpful answer, but that's how it is for me.
No, I completely get exactly what you're saying there. I mean, for me, I love structure. I love being able to sort of like think, right, that's the story idea that I'm going with. And last night I was talking about Charlotte Perkins Gilman's Yellow Wallpaper, one of my students, and saying that the structure of that, which is basically a story about a woman sitting and looking at wallpaper. I think that sums it up. But the way she's managed to sort of like shape so much character on the top of that very, very simple plot.
Yeah.
And again, location has worked there, but I hadn't even realized that, because I'm just not as clever as you and right.
I beg to differ, but it's just the way I work. I spend a lot of time focusing my students to look at the locational emotional connection. In fact, I have a whole 3-hour masterclass where I go on incessantly, because we can't do it. We can't see anywhere, whether it's the village shop or Stonehenge, without our subconscious already telling us what we're going to find there.
Do you think that your appreciation of location, oh my God, I sound like a rapper, your appreciation of location has sort of like helps with the fact that you write series fiction? Yes,
very much so. Essential. In fact, I would say if you weren't writing series fiction, it's important, but less so, because when you write series, you really need your reader to be able to see where you are. This is particularly strong with the Mill Grange series that I've just finished, which is set on Exmoor, in a particular house in Exmoor, which I've been to. I run writing retreats from it. I needed people to be able to feel that they would spot it if they saw it, that they would know. Even though I know that everyone's going to see it slightly differently, that's fine. But I want them to feel as though if they saw it, they could walk in the door and feel at home.
Yeah, I'm stopping myself because we talk about this for hours. And
sorry.
What piece of writing advice would you give to anybody who's just starting out?
If you're just starting out, ignore all advice and do your own thing. Just write. You know, at the risk of shooting you and I in the foot, don't take classes. Just write. Do what you want. Get some stuff down. Then take the classes. Then start thinking, okay, how do I make this better? You know, what help can I get to improve what I've done? Because there isn't a right way. There's lots of ways, and it's finding your way and your style and your voice and pleasing yourself. It's supposed to be fun, you know?
Yeah. And I don't even think there's a right way for one person. I think there's just a right way for one story.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
So what worked on the last thing that I was working on is not going to work for the next thing. So yeah.
No.
And I do like that whole notion of just right, just find out what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong, and yeah, because it doesn't matter, you know, if you're not contracted, if you're, you know, just starting out, if this is what you want to do, if something in your head, you know, is telling you have to do this, the voice can't be ignored. If you're a writer, you're a writer. That's it. You're doomed. Frankly, you've got to do it. So do it your way. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Treat it as an apprenticeship. You know, no job comes without cock-ups. You know, but you've got to make them to move forwards. So give yourself permission just to do it. And you're absolutely right. No job does come without cock-ups. You've clearly been talking to my boss. Who do you read for pleasure?
Oh, lots and lots of people. I like to read quite widely. Or although I am picky in that if a book doesn't grab me on the first page, it doesn't get read. Whoever you are, So I've got to be straight in. I love Terry Pratchett. I've read Terry incessantly for years because not only was he a genius, his books just make me laugh. I love Peter Robinson's police procedural crimes. They're the only ones that manage to not get dry and keep the drama coming and keep you guessing. Quite often, because I write crime, and if I'm reading crime, I've worked it out, not because it's obvious, but because I've learned to think like that. But his, I don't tend to guess. I love reading Colin Dexter because the man was a genius and he's a masterclass on the page. But best of all, the best, Kate Griffin's Kitty Peck adventures, Victorian Gothic thrillers, crime. If I could be anybody, I would poleaxe her now and stash her little body and take over. And I can say that because she's become a friend and she will forgive me. But she's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. She can't write quick enough.
You want to become Kate Griffin when you grow up, then?
Yes, or grow down. Bless her. I think she's all of 4'10".
You said to read lots and read widely, and quite interesting to me is you said if it doesn't grab you on the first page, it doesn't get any further than that.
Nope.
Now this is something that I live by as well. It's if I'm talking about a Netflix series with someone and they sort of say, oh yeah, but stick with it because by season 5 it's brilliant.
Yeah, I have spent time. I've paid for this. Now this is interesting you say about Netflix because I totally agree. And one of the other things I do when I have 2 minutes, in the afternoons, I write dramas. I write audio dramas for Spiteful Puppet, which do the Robin Sherwood ITV stuff from the 80s. And I have written other stuff for Audible, which annoyingly I can't tell you about because I'm contracted not until it's out. But when it is out, you'll go, oh gosh, isn't Jenny lucky to have that lead star? And she is very lucky. But you've got to grab. If I'd written, it's audio. If I don't grab the listener in the first 3 lines, I've had it. Audible won't look at it. BBC won't look at it. ITV will say, go away. It's got to grab. So why shouldn't that be the same for a book? And for television? Because we come to books, we come to TV when we've had a busy day. There's so much choice. We have taken time to select that book or program. The writer of that program owes it to the audience to give them what they want and to give it to them without faffing around.
And could you say the word faff again? Because I've not heard you say faff before.
Faff. Well, you know me, darling, I don't swear, but I do faff.
I agree with the list of writers that you've mentioned there. Pratchett, we lost so much when we lost him.
Terrible name.
One of my favourite books of all time is Good Omens, and I can read that again and again. It just
you see, I'm the same with Men at Arms. Men at Arms, just I must have read it 20 times, but I'm in stitches every time. It's so clever.
And the the Christmas one, and it's not the Godfather.
Hogfather.
Right. We're going to end up in a Terry Pratchett appreciation book.
Yes, we would, wouldn't we?
What draws you to writing in the genre of romance, and how do you deal with criticism when people criticise or dismiss the genre as being formulaic?
Well, I largely ignore them because it usually means that they've either not read any, and they certainly haven't a go at writing one. I used to have it's similar when I used to write erotic romance back in the day, and people go, oh, well, that's so easy, and I would just say, well, give it a go then. And as you know, it's really hard because you don't want to be formulaic. The argument I have with this formula stigma that romance has is I say, well, okay then, so how about crime? If we took the formula out of crime, what would happen? And they look at you like blank. And I say, okay, so when you read crime, but what do you want? You want something bad happened, somebody did solve it, and the murderer presumably to be apprehended, or if not, there'd be a good reason why they haven't been apprehended, and it goes on to a sequel or not. Now, is that formula? So in romance, yes, 9 times out of 10, the people that you hope are going to get together will get together. And if you don't, you're sort of cheating your reader, because that's what they've bought your book for.
Yeah.
What matters is the journey, how they get from meeting to becoming a couple or friends, or whatever your relationship situation is. And getting that different enough to be interesting is the challenge. Every book has a formula.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, I'm with you when people say, oh, that particular genre, yeah, it's so formulaic or so tad. If you actually ask somebody if they've read one, chances are that if they're going to be honest with you, it's, no, I've never read one. Somebody told me it's formulaic. Yeah.
The most formulaic one I've ever come across, years ago, Mills and Boon approached me to write for them. I was tempted because, they treat it like a proper job. You have a proper contract, you have your salary, what have you. Well, you did at the time, it might be different now. But I couldn't do it because everything is so laid out. They tell you the characters' names, they tell you where it's going to happen, what's going to happen. And there was so much formula, there was so much set down that I had no creativity left. I couldn't, and I've always been morally opposed to characters called Troy anyway, so.
Do you know, I've got a friend called Troy. I haven't really. But that would have been awesome, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I turned it down. I couldn't do it.
Romancing Robin Hood. It's been described by one reviewer as a contemporary romance blended with a medieval whodunit. So how much research did you put into the historical accuracy of this title?
I cheated shamelessly and used my PhD. I had pre-researched. So what happened was, back in the mist of time, when I was working for a dreadful publisher who no longer exists, thank God, I wanted to write historical fiction, preferably crime. But I was told I couldn't because I had made my name writing romantic fiction, and they wanted me to stay that way. So my rather fabulous editor, a lovely chap called Greg Rees, said, why don't you write a contemporary fiction book about a woman writing a medieval crime story? And after I'd hugged him and bought him a pizza, I did exactly that. I thought, so the heroine of Romancing Robin Hood, Dr. Grace Harper, is basically me, because I did teach medieval crime at Leicester University back in the day, and that's where she is. But unlike me, she's so steeped in her passion for all things Robin Hood and medieval that like life's passing her by. She's supposed to be writing a university textbook. She's not. She's pretending she is, but she isn't. She's writing this medieval crime book based on her research of a family called the Folvilles, which is what I did my PhD on, seeing as we're PhD dropping, which is basically asking whether the medieval criminals of the 14th century were as bad as ballad history shows them to be. So, are the Robin Hood ballads accurate in their crimes? Are the other ballads accurate? Their crimes were the political songs of the day, telling it like it was, or is it propaganda like newspapers now? Blah blah. So I've got Grace writing a story about the Folvilles within Romancing Robin Hood, while meanwhile being bridesmaid at her best friend's wedding. Why not?
Why not, indeed, yeah. And it's one of the reasons why it's receiving reviews that sort of like, praise the historical detail that you've got in there. And when I was actually reading the opening pages of it, I was thinking, fucking hell, this is an autobiography. Yes.
To some extent, I am fairly shameless in the use of my own life in my fiction. Another Cup of Coffee, which was my first rom-com, is based on a question that I asked myself, a what if, about my own life. When I was in my final year at university, my boyfriend dropped me in the middle of my finals, and we'd been together for about a year. And I was pretty heartbroken, as you can imagine. And I'd been offered the chance to go to Scotland to work, and I thought, sod it, I'm going. You know, I've done my exams. It was all over. I was going. There was no logic involved at this point. I was just in a mess. But my best friend stopped me, and I didn't go. Now, what if I'd gone? So the whole story is about the me that would have been if I had gone to Scotland. And, you know, and I know what I'm like. I would have just closeted myself away and no one would have seen me again. So it's about her coming back to England 13 years later to find out what went wrong. Also in that story, there's a character called Kit who writes erotic fiction as this, you know. So not only is there the me as me in that book, but there's the me as Kay as well, because personal experience is so powerful if you can fictionalize it. I mean, it's all fictionalized, it's all exaggerated, everything changes. It's only the beginning that starts realistically.
Yeah, absolutely. And what if questions, are they one of the ways that you lead into an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I bang on about to my students, bless the suffering they go through, is to ask yourself questions of every single paragraph. Never stop asking questions, and the top one's got to be what if. Unless it's sci-fi, where you must continually say why not, you know, to think in a different direction. But no, it's interesting you mentioned about Romance and Robin Hood. That's how come I became Jennifer Ash as well, because the medieval part was so popular. The first book in the Jennifer Ash story, The Outlaw's Ransom, is that short story from Romance and Robin Hood, slightly expanded, and then that's become a whole series on its own now, looking at Matilda and her medieval antics.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you know, there are so many directions that I could go with, and I don't want to take your valuable time. Right. So one of the things that always fascinated me about your writing is that you can do it in a cafe. How do you cope with all that noise and hustle and bustle of people talking and chattering around you?
Well, I'll be honest, it does help that I am 90% deaf, so that's fine. Hearing aids are well hidden. I can't work in silence. I find silence really off-putting. I find it like a presence, and I can't do it. I need movement around me. If I have to work at home, as I did during lockdown, I would always have the radio on in the background or something, just so that it's not too quiet. I don't mind the moving around. I tend to get in the zone, and I don't tend to be bothered by it. But I am very fortunate because the cafe I work in, I have the desk at the back, which is just mine. There's a plaque up on the wall saying, you know, Jenny's, go away. And people tend to leave me alone if I'm clearly working. And if I'm on a deadline, I'm really up against it, I have a t-shirt that I put on. And people know that this is the t-shirt that if I'm wearing, because it's pink and I never wear pink, so they know, you know, why she's wearing pink. And it says on a deadline, approach with caution, and they leave me alone.
The warning of the pink t-shirt, yeah, I get that, and that's just so completely different from. I mean, I know that Scottish bloke wrote Train Spotting, Irving Welsh. He does an awful lot of his writing in pubs, or used to.
Right.
And yeah, for me, I just need absolute silence whilst I'm working.
Yeah, lots of people do. Yeah, and it's fine. It's no right way, no wrong way, just the way that works for us. I tend to, if it's too quiet, or if, you know, when you're in a cafe situation and you get the people that sit at the table and they're not talking to each other, they are over shouting each other, they're not having a conversation, they're having a competition. That drives me crackers, because even with the headphones on, because I do have headphones, it gets really bad, I can still hear every word they say. So I do have emergency playlists which I can plug in that match what I'm writing, and they can be quite loud.
So what are you currently working on, and where can we find more of your work?
Okay, so as is my style, I'm doing several things at once. So I am currently working on a brand new series. I'm writing book 2 at the moment. I can't give you the title because it hasn't yet been decided. But the first title of this new series is called Frost Falls at the Potting Shed. It's a brand new series of rom-coms. set around the premise of a nursery, which is going to hopefully eventually become a garden centre. It's like a growth story. Two sisters, father dies during the pandemic, and they are given the chance: do they sell up, or do they follow their father's dream, etc., etc. And it's set fairly locally because it was inspired by a garden centre which I go to quite often. I love garden centres. I love the people in garden centres. Are so interesting. It's like a character, you know, it's like a vat of inspiration. So I go there a lot. So that comes out on October the 27th, and I should be getting the edits back for book 1 any day now. Book 2 should be finished draft form by the end of this month. I'm also planning a new audio drama, which I can't tell you about, which is very frustrating, sorry. And I'm also plotting the 5th Folville book, which I hope to start writing soon, although I'm between publishers at the moment, so I have to decide what to do because my publisher retired. So I need to decide if I'm going to be a big brave girl and self-publish it, or if I'm going to look for representation.
Jenny, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely
Anytime.
lovely talking to you, and yeah, I'm sure this is going to be invaluable to all my students who are watching.
I hope so. Thank you, Ash. Take care.
You too.